Alright, so the motor that this flywheel came off of should have had some sort of mounting point for this pointer that I'm talking about. You'll notice the line for the .464 is sitting right over here. And interestingly enough, when I put this cover in place, that line can be seen easily through this hole right here. So I think the pointer on the motor that this flywheel came off of lived probably right around here. In videos where I've seen the pointer, or photographs where I've seen the pointer, including a photograph from the service manual itself that somebody had posted a page of online, not the complete manual obviously, because I would have printed that out long ago, there is a boss somewhere in this area here with a threaded hole, and that's where the pointer would be mounted, and then you could adjust it a little bit, which is what they're talking about. The whole purpose of this .464 is to align that pointer correctly, and then once you've got that aligned correctly, then you can go and use your other reference marks to set your timing. So what I got is I just knocked it off by accident, but I taped this little sharp metal piece right here, okay, to, I had several little blocks of metal. I found one that was the perfect thickness so that when I use the two-sided tape and stick it to here, okay, it actually lines up almost perfectly with that point right there. So let me, I want to get it close enough so that I can really see that alignment good, but far enough away so that it doesn't, the teeth on the flywheel don't hit it. Okay, so we're kind of at an angle here with the camera, but if I was looking at it from here over here straight on with the camera, that's actually in perfect alignment with that line. So now I know my pointer's set. So now that means when I come back to these other locations on the these other markings on this sticker, they should be correct, and now I can test that. Alright, so for starters, this is what I did. I grabbed here and I hit that thing, so you be careful. For starters, let's bring this back clockwise to top dead center again. Right there. So my pointer should be pointing right at TDC. Okay, and it's kind of hard to see. Let me reposition the camera. Alright, so that's the tip of my pointer. You can just see it right there at the bottom of the frame. Alright, and if you'll notice, see that thick black line right there? Not the left one, but the right one. If you notice, the pointer looks like it's a little bit to the right of that. That's exactly where it should be, because that thick line is actually the 2 degree mark. Okay, that's 2 degrees before top dead center. So I don't know if you can see it or not. Hopefully it's showing up. But a couple of lines over, right where that pointer's almost exactly pointing at, is a 0 degree mark. That's my top dead center. Okay, so now we can check some other things just to make sure they line up, and they're going to, because there's no reason why they shouldn't. But for instance, you remember I talked about the the timing point for the wide open throttle setting. Okay, on these motors, the original specification was like 23 degrees or 25 degrees, somewhere around there. And then there was Mercury came out with a service bulletin basically saying, hey, we're starting to see some problems with pistons melting and some other horrible things happening because of the octane ratings of the new fuel that's available. So they recommend changing it to 21 degrees. Well, lo and behold, somebody online posted that they recall that the 21 degree point is actually at 0.104 inches before top dead center. So just like we did the 464, what I can do is I can now come to 0.104 before top dead center, and my pointer should be pointing right at the 21 degree mark. Interestingly enough, I noticed when I was looking on here for a point to see if there was a place where the pointer might have mounted on here. Here's the part that the switch box assembly is mounted to, this whole front assembly right here. Look at this. There's a sticker right there, and it's telling me the timing is 23 degrees. Look at that, 0.125 before top dead center. So that's the original timing before the fuel change. So I could actually go to 0.125 and it should be at 23 degrees, and then go to 0.104 and it should be at 21 degrees. So I'm at top dead center now, so I'm going to go counterclockwise. I'm going to go back. This is 100. And again, I'm going to go past it a little bit and then come back to it. So 0.125. And there we go. My pointer is pointing right at that black line right there. That right next to it says 23 degrees. So I know my pointer right here is in the perfect spot. Problem is, I obviously can't run the engine with that pointer in that position because it's not going to stay there. So there's a couple things I could do. I could actually rig up, I could actually drill and tap a couple of holes if I wanted to go through the trouble and rig up a way to mount this fairly permanently there. But I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out whether or not, when this other top cover is in position, whether or not there's a mark on this sticker or on this flywheel somewhere, a point on this flywheel that corresponds perfectly to line up with this sticker that's on this cover. Okay, so in other words, I've got this nice sticker here that has all the labeling on it. It doesn't have the 0.464, but it's got all my other key points on it. All right. Well, unfortunately, I'm completely missing this little rubber standoff right here, this isolation mount. Okay, it's one of these things right here. This one's missing, and the back one is there, but it's torn. But I can actually line it up perfectly because the way it tore, it almost keys into each other. So for the purposes of just setting this on here in perfect alignment, I can set that one to where it's supposed to be. This one goes in its hole. And this one here, what I did is I put a couple of blocks in here to prop this up to pretty much the same height as this. The reason why is because if I take these blocks out, if I just left this loose, you can see by dropping this down, I'm actually moving that position a little bit of those lines. So I want it to be as close as possible to correct. All right, so now my question to myself is there a line on that old sticker or something on that flywheel that will line up with the 23 degree mark on, because that's where I have it set right now. I know I've got it set at 23 degrees. So let's take a look. And lo and behold, there is no 23 degree mark on this sticker. There's a 20 and a 25, but all the graduations in between are there. So I could see the 25 degree mark, and if I go back 2 divisions and look at that, our old friend, the 3 dots that are actually punched into the flywheel, so if the sticker's gone, the dots will still be there. Those 3 dots right there, and the what's left of the line on the sticker, are like dead on 23 degrees right there. So now I know that even if I took this sticker off completely and took my makeshift pointer off completely, I can be satisfied that if as long as I'm lined in that lineup, I can use this sticker on this cover right here. That's great news. All right, so far so good. Now for the next little conundrum. Is this pulley on the distributor in proper alignment, or do I need to move this toothed belt over one direction or another, any teeth. So again, there's a little bit of confusion there for me because I got conflicting information. So let me start by talking about the guy I was talking about who was kind of like working his way through this problem and everything. And in his video, he talks about that in his particular situation, he lined up these 3 dots, okay, so that it was perfectly in line with the center of this pulley. And he said at that point, he said the little tiny arrow that's on the top of this pulley will point directly at the center line of the crankshaft. And then these 2 marks right here will not be in alignment with each other. But he wasn't sure whether or not that was normal or not, and I think in fact it is. Interestingly enough, these lines right here are almost in alignment with each other right now at the and we're set right now at that 23 degrees mark. So that's kind of interesting. But anyways, getting back to this. So the problem is, I had also read online something about that when this is in correct proximity, that little arrow might not actually hit the center line of the crankshaft. It might actually be a little bit off to, I believe, the right. And then there were some guys who talked about that if it's off a little bit to the left, you can have nothing but problems. So there was a whole discussion about that in one of the forums. And then there was a guy who posted some information there, but then there was like a caveat about, even in the page of the service manual that he had showed was just specifically for this. And there was a caveat in there talking about depending on whether or not you have the Thunderbolt ignition system. So I've got to actually verify what the ignition is in this thing, because I'm not sure whether or not the Thunderbolt ignition came later, or whether or not this was converted to a Thunderbolt ignition at some point later, because I don't think this is the original distributor. But anyways, for the time being, just out of curiosity, I'm going to bring this line over. Now, the guy who was doing the videos, he referred to this line as the 17 degrees after top dead center. He actually referred to it as before top dead center, but I think he just misspoke. I'm pretty sure I know he misspoke. He meant to say after. Because remember, this is clockwise revolution, so top dead center comes around, passes this point, and then this mark right here, the 3 dot mark, is actually after top dead center has gone by. So this is going to be after top dead center. All of these are your before. Okay, so anywho, you got 17 degrees after top dead center. So then when he brings it over here, it's like, well, wait a minute, why did he call it 17 degrees? He's just referring to the fact that this is 17 degrees after top dead center when it's lined up with what? With the pointer, which I didn't have. Okay, when it's over here in this position, its only job, from what it appears, is to line up with this so you can get this pulley oriented correctly. So you can be close enough to the ballpark so that later you can come back and change your screw adjustments down here to get your timing spot on. There's a plate down here that I showed you before. Alright. Okay guys, I double checked and triple checked the information that I had culled from online to figure out exactly what I'm supposed to be doing with this mark on top of here and the flywheel as far as the distributor belt goes. And it turns out that what's supposed to happen is when these 3 dots here on the flywheel, which if you're missing your sticker, you should still have the 3 dots because they're indentations on the flywheel, that when the flywheel is positioned so that the center line of the if you draw a line from the center line of the crankshaft to the 3 dots, and you rotate the flywheel so that this tooth, which is what this valley between these two teeth right here, is right where that's pointing to. That's right where your three lines are. When that's lined up in line with the center of the shaft of the distributor, that at that point, the little cast arrow in there should be pointing right back at that center line. All right, so right there I think we're looking pretty good. The arrow right there is pointing pretty much right at the spot between these two teeth, which is pretty much lined up with the three dots on the flywheel. So that's right where it should be. Now the manual page that was found online that I was reading actually referenced that in some instances on 4 and 6 cylinder engines, so not every time I guess, but on some instances on 4 and 6 cylinder engines with Thunderbolt ignition, that arrow might not want to line up with that, and it'll be about a half a tooth off. In other words, if you try moving it one way, it'll be a half a tooth off in this direction, and if you try and correct that by moving the belt over one tooth, it'll be a half a tooth off in the other direction. And what they tell you to do is they tell you to set it up so that it's a half a tooth off with the arrow in the clockwise direction on the distributor pulley. Okay, so they want that arrow kicked over that way a little bit. If it's going to have to be off, if you can't get it dead on, you want it off going in that direction. If it's off going in that direction, they warn you that you're going to have problems with syncing up the timing and everything else on the motor. Alright everybody, what's happened is I tightened down these bolts on top of the flywheel, and after I tightened the bolts down on the flywheel, I rechecked and I'm now half a tooth off. So what the manual was talking about has apparently happened, and the only thing I can attribute that to is that there is a little bit of free play, a little bit of slop, or the clearance of these holes, and I think that when I tighten these down, it turned the flywheel just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is, if I'm correct, I believe that if I try and move this belt over one full tooth, that what's going to happen is that the timing mark is going to end up being slightly to the right of where it should be, or clockwise on this rotation, and that's where it should be set. Right now it's half a tooth counterclockwise of where it should be, which is what the manual said is not what you want, because you'll have all kinds of problems later. Alright, because the motor's tilted, I've actually now tilted my camera a little bit on the tripod to match the angle that I've got the motor tilted, so that you can really get, because the camera angle, it just occurred to me, because the camera was shooting straight on and a motor that was tilted, it might not look like this was lined up. Hopefully this will look better. So you can see my line up top there on the flywheel right there, where the three dots are, is in line with that valley between these two teeth, and that valley is lined right up with the hole where the bolt goes that holds the little cap onto the distributor pulley. And the arrow that you can see down in there, okay, the arrow is actually just to the left of this valley, so it's kind of off at an angle to the left counterclockwise. Alright, so now I've just rotated the pulley one belt tooth clockwise, and you can just see the two teeth. You can see the teeth in the frame there. Let me zoom up just a smidge. Alright, so now you can see that that arrow is now pointing just about a half tooth to the right of that center point between these two teeth right here. That should be it. Oh, and just for good measure, I did decide to double check my timing, my homemade timing pointer's position, in case that flywheel did turn more than I thought when I tightened it down. But that's I just reset it to 0.464, and sure enough, my pointer is still lining up with that line real well. So I am satisfied that at this point I can now proceed with hooking up the electrics and doing some static timing.